Welcome to the Real Turf Techs podcast for the technician that wants to get real. Follow along as we talk to industry professionals and address hot topics that we all face. Along the way, we'll learn tips and tricks. I'm your host, Trent Manning. Let's have some fun. This episode of Real Turf Techs on Golf Course Industries Superintendent Radio Network is presented by Foley Company, a strong supporter of equipment technicians and golf course maintenance departments everywhere. Foley Company offers a proven solution for above and below the turf for turf professionals everywhere. To learn more about Foley Company's line of reel grinders, bed knife grinders, and the Air 2 G2 family of products, or to find a distributor, visit www.foleyco.com. Foley, ready for play. Welcome to the Real Turf Techs podcast, episode 159. Today we're talking to Bruce Alexander, Product Performance Manager at Ransomes Jacobsen in Ipswich, England. He works across all departments with dealers, end users, to bring feedback to ensure they produce products for the end user. He also provides tournament support, like he did at the Summer Games last year in France. Let's talk to Bruce. Welcome, Bruce, to the Real Turf Techs podcast. Thanks for coming on. I think you might be one of the longest, loyalist fans. So it's kind of interesting to have you on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. And yeah, I'm in awe of being on the Real Turf Techs podcast. It's an honour, Trent. So thank you very much indeed.
You're too kind. And Bruce has called me out over the years. And I think that's kind of, honestly, and I appreciate it. And I think I think it's good for the industry, right? And not that I'd said anything terrible or anything, but he was like, hey, maybe you want to look at this. And I'm all for that. I want to learn just like everybody else. And we only know what we know. So I appreciate you sending an email. And then since then, we've emailed back and forth. I got to meet you in San Diego. You got to show me one of Jacobsen's finest machines.
Oh, to chase you down, though, you're a busy man, Trent.
I know, it's hard. I get pulled in all different directions, and you go across the trade show floor, and I do have an agenda, and I want to look at a certain piece of equipment or whatever, and then you run into somebody that you hadn't seen in a long time. It's all really good problems, too. Tell us how you got into the turf industry.
I don't think I'm alone when I say that I didn't leave school thinking, so I want to be involved in turf equipment. So I'll try and keep it short, but it's quite a long story. So I left school.
We got an hour to fill, so just go ahead.
Some of my colleagues now, if they're listening, are thinking, an hour, he's going to want more than that.
That's fair. We can go over a little bit.
I'm a farmer's son, so I grew up down in Surrey. Farmer's son, grew up on a farm, and the farm was owned by my dad and his brother. And not a good story for them was the farm wasn't really big enough to support the two families. My dad, back in the probably early 70s or late 70s, somewhere when I was still very young anyway, set up a car repair garage on the farm. So now, Trent, imagine that you're a young lad. I've got two older brothers, and you're growing up on a farm with a car repair garage. To me, that's an idyllic situation. So all I wanted to do was be involved in farming, to be honest.
Okay.
I left school, worked on a farm for a year, then went off to Merriswood Agricultural College just to do an agricultural year's course. And even before I finished, I'd been back to the farm that I'd spent my student year at, wanting to work there. Cutting the story a bit shorter, I ended up back there for 3 or 4 years, I think it was. And at the time, there were 9 people on that farm. We ran a couple of other courses. There's a turf.
You've been in turf for a long time.
Couple of other farms. Interestingly, one was Givens Grove Farm, which is now a golf course. But it went down from 9 people through the farming rough years, the late 80s, and it went down to 3, and I was still there. And it went down to 1, and I was made redundant, and I just didn't know what I was going to do. So I was self-employed. I'd always liked playing with cars, things like that, mechanicking. So I ended up going back to Rycottwood College. And I went to Rycottwood College in Thame because I'd gone round several of the agricultural dealers in the area. None of them were really interested in me as a mechanic because my education, my paperwork wasn't to do with agriculture engineering. But 4 or 5 of the service managers from those dealers had actually been to Rycottwood College, and I thought, if that's where these guys have been, that's where I'm going to go. So I went and I actually did the 3-year course as a 1-year course. Obviously, I was a mature student then. I went back and came out of that after a year as being the top student, which I'm quite proud of. And then went back round to the same agricultural dealers and started with a firm called SCATS, Southern Counties Agricultural Trading Society. And within a short period of starting, I was called into the office and the workshop manager said to me that they were taking on this new franchise, Jacobsen, and I'd be the guy that they wanted to look after this Jacobsen equipment. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and again,
That's interesting. That's cool.
picture a young guy, never played golf, only interested in working on tractors, foragers, and combines. Oh, he's going to work on turf equipment.
Okay. So what year is this?
Oh, now my memory's a terrible thing, but I was back to Rycottwood, I think, in 93, 94.
Okay.
So
right.
probably 95, 96, something
Okay.
like that, I think. So,
When did Jacobsen get their start?
pooh, a lot of years before that, because I
Okay.
remember.
Yeah. I knew they'd been around for a while, but I didn't know
Yeah,
it
I
was
think.
50 or
Oh,
even before that.
certainly in America they've been a lot longer, hadn't they? In the UK, I'm not sure.
Okay.
To me, that golf wasn't an interest. Golf equipment wasn't an interest until Jacobsen
Yeah.
came
Gotcha.
along. So.
But did Ransom start over there?
Now, Ransomes, you're back to where it all began, Trent. Now you're back to
Okay.
the
Okay.
home
All
of
right.
cylinder mowing and the budding paint,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
don't pin me down on years, but you're back into the
Okay.
1800s.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, so that the Ransomes Jacobsen site now, as you're probably well aware, all turf manufacturing came across from America into Ransomes Jacobsen,
Okay.
Ipswich. And that was really because Textron, the parent company, had identified Ipswich as they termed it, a centre of excellence. However, that decision happened further up. All manufacturing came
Mm-hmm.
across to Ipswich, possibly at the worst possible time when COVID was just coming on as
Right.
well.
Right.
So it was not a comfortable experience. But yeah, Ransomes goes back to the late 1800s or even mid 1800s, and the budding patent, that's where it all began. So yeah, so coming back to SCATS, was with SCATS for a number of years, and then SCATS decided they were pulling out of agricultural and turf machinery. And at that time, I moved across to work for a large dealer in the UK, Ernest Doe and Sons. They took on the patch that I was working. And I was with them for about a year, and that would be 99 I was with them, I think. And then was asked or had a conversation with Alan Prickett, who then was with Ransomes Jacobsen, and was suggesting that a move out to the Middle East might be a good career move for me. And by that time, I'd switched into sales. So I was a sort of technical salesperson, and that was what they were looking for over in the Middle East, based in Dubai, working for Omtag as a distributor for the Middle East and India. Was out there for 3 years, came back and took a break from Ransomes Jacobsen, working for Wiedemann UK Limited. Wiedemann UK Limited, still one of the absolute top companies that you could work for. David Ray, the owner, and the team at Wiedemann UK there. Fantastic time, great product.
Now, are they
But
still around? I'm
they're
maybe with
still,
that.
yeah,
Okay.
they're still around. And in actual fact, David Ray, the owner, had started up Fairways Grass Machinery as a Ransomes Jacobsen dealer for Scotland, and that's still the case. So still always at trade shows, always like to think I'll go across there and have a chat to the guys there.
Okay. All right.
And for Wiedemann, I was like a technical guy for the UK, and also had a sort of looking after sales across the central area of the UK. But at that time, now we're getting back to about, after I've been there for a few years, so about 2008, I got two daughters and they were just coming into teenage years, and I needed really to be at home a bit more. In the UK with Wiedemann, there was a lot of travelling. And I'd been involved with an engineering company in Nottingham. We were trying to work some things out and do some special little projects with Wiedemann. And just at the time when I was really thinking I needed to be at home more was at a time when they were looking for a service manager. So that was Howard Marshall Engineering. Now, certainly dealers over here and a number of customers will have dealt with Howard Marshall Engineering. So I think the tagline would be bespoke engineering solutions. Okay. And Howard Marshall himself, an absolute guru, learned from Howard every day. So I had a great time there and was there from 2008 to 2015. In 2015, a couple of guys from Ransomes Jacobsen, Rupert Price and Will Carr, came and asked for a chat, and we had a chat, and
one chat leads to another. Yes. Is what we say over here in the States. And
it certainly doesn't it. And they'd come up with a plan to sell direct. So Jacobsen had a direct selling model in the States. They were looking to set up a direct selling model in the UK, a different format, a different type, but covering Staffordshire and Shropshire. And they were looking really for somebody that could run that from a sales and a technical point of view, keeping overheads very low, but the service, if you like, the number one priority. So end users were really getting well looked after. And that was a great time. To this day, that was at a time when JCB golf course was being built, and I had a great time being involved with the guys there, knew the guys there from construction through, and still now really pleased to have a good relationship with the guys in there. So then 2019, just as COVID was breaking, that within the business there was a change of direction, and I moved to becoming a PSM, a product support manager, which is technical support for the dealers. And I think I've heard you on the podcast talk about if you want to be stretched, then, you work as a dealer guy and you're certainly stretched every day.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What I can tell you is working as a technical support guy for those dealer guys is another level of stress and strain.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there is any good problems, but you get to work on exciting problems and you're stretched and tested, aren't you?
That's one of the things that I really enjoyed about it is each day was a new problem, and most problems, not all of them, obviously, but a lot of the problems were challenging to figure out. And I was working for a Toro distributor, so I would call the T-TAC team, I think, or the TAC team. No, they called them the TAC team. T-TAC, that's the Carolinas group. But anyway, getting old, man. Anyway, I would call the TAC team at Toro, and talk to your counterpart, right?
Yeah.
Up there. That's all they are, technical advisors. And they would walk you through all the stuff. Like, you got to look at this, all the things. And that was really fun. I really enjoyed it.
I think behind that, when you're ringing those guys, certainly for me, I would be keeping a spreadsheet of problems that they would be bringing that we were working together. And
yeah.
And the amount of learning and understanding that you go through from head scratching some of those problems is pretty special. And I'm sure that Toro and John Deere teams are the same. For me, one of the best teams I've worked with has been the product support guys within Ransomes Jacobsen. Over in your way, there was James Jensen, Dean Morris, and Ron Larita that's just taken early retirement. Those three guys over there. Over this way, the likes of Simon Hansen, Steve Turner, Hanford Sievers, all guys of a hell of a lot of experience. And when I newly stepped into that role, they were great, brilliant guys. And then the last bit of the picture, if you like, to get up to today was the creation of this product performance manager role, where the role now that I'm doing is working across all departments and bringing in dealer feedback and end user feedback to try and make sure that we're producing equipment and machines that are meeting exactly what the end user expects of that machine to do. And that's to be working across the different departments is a real good side of the business to be in.
Yeah, no, it sounds, yeah, that would be a fun place to be. And I really think all manufacturers should be talking to the end user more. And I'm not saying you're not doing it enough. I don't know if you're doing it enough or not. But a lot of times it seems like these big corporations, they don't really want to listen to customer feedback too much. And I think it's really important because if anyone is going to tell you what you need to do with your equipment, it's the end user. And I ain't saying there's definitely some you probably don't want to listen to. Like you said, you got your list. And I was thinking about that when you were saying your list because I remember I'd call the TAC team and say, I got a Toro 4500 and it's doing this. And they'd say, go do this. They'd heard the problem 10 times. They knew exactly what it was, common, fail point, whatever. Maybe we're going to do a rework on it or whatever it is. So, yeah, interviewing those customers and getting that feedback from them, that tells you what they need.
I think it is really good to stand in front of a customer. The example I give of where communication is so critical. A dealer may do a demonstration of a machine, and the machine, for whatever reason, the guys haven't liked it. Feedback may come back from the dealer. He didn't find the operator's platform. He didn't find it comfortable. And that's the information you get. And that's where it needs to be a lot more detail. What didn't he find comfortable? So the seat actually is a Grammer seat and it's really comfortable and the hole's in exactly the right place. And he loved that actually. What he really meant was the steering wheel didn't have quite enough rake adjustment on it or something like that. And to pin down the feedback that you can give it to the engineer that's responsible. That guy doesn't want to know the operator's platform's not comfortable. It doesn't mean anything to him. But to tell him the steering wheel needs a little bit more rake on it, it's a little bit easier to handle. But
I think a lot of mechanics can relate to that too, because when
yeah,
a machine breaks, right, that's what we want to know. And when an operator tells you it doesn't work, well, that
yeah,
don't tell me anything. Okay, it
yeah,
doesn't work. What doesn't work about it? Did the tire fall off? What are we talking
yeah.
about here?
How many times have you had an operator say the machine didn't start? And you say,
Yeah.
what do you mean it didn't start? It didn't start. You mean it's turning over? Or it's turning over? Is it firing?
Exactly.
Is it?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. It's so frustrating. Get
Yeah.
little nuggets of information out of some of these operators. So I could, yeah, relate to your story.
So
For the engineers, it's got to be really hard.
Yeah, so we've got a great group of engineers now that, again, in this role, been able to build that relationship up with to the point where when I'm at the factory, it's a case of, let's make sure we get together and just do a bit of brainstorming ahead of any official report or anything else coming in. But the other thing that you'll be familiar with, Trent, is when an end user is telling you that there's a design problem, there's a design issue, there may or may not be, but it's usually not unknown. That manufacturer usually knows that they want to rework something, but you can't just rework everything or it has to do everything else, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a great side of the role. And the other thing that I've been doing quite a bit more of more recently is what we call technical sales expert training. And that was primarily aimed at the dealer sales guys to try and make sure that when you guys are talking to the sales guys from your dealers, that you start wanting to talk about bottom blade selection, BCD and geometry, that they've got a guy that's fairly expert in cutting unit geometry and can engage in those conversations with confidence and try specific issues that you're trying to solve around the course. So we've rolled that out in the UK so far and a couple in Europe, which has gone down really well. We've got dealer sales guys. We have dealer workshop guys, workshop managers come on that course as well. Without fail, at the end of it, they all say, look, we've been in the trade a long time, but we've never gone into it in that level of detail before, or it's been helpful just to spend a few days only talking about cutting units. The total focus is on cutting units. So,
no, that's awesome that y'all are doing that. And I know we talked a little bit before we got started here. I think there's a huge, there's a lot of, I don't want to say misinformation out there, but there's definitely some misinformation. There's some myths that probably need to be corrected. But from all the manufacturers, and not calling out just one, we all talk about stuff a little bit different and use different terminology, and it gets really confusing, and that's at the manufacturer level, and then it filters down to the distributor level, and then it really goes against the wall. It's crazy. I had this happen. So I had fairway mowers, and well, it was John Deere fairway mower 7700s, and we traded. Long story short, we got new ones, and they were, I don't know, 3 years old, 4 years old, whatever it was. So it hadn't been that long, right? 3 years. And we get these new mowers, and we had an extra set of cutting units from the original mowers. Nothing wrong with them, all the stuff. And we've been mowing all year with the new mowers, and we need to grind one of the new mowers. So we take that set of reels off, put on the other set of reels. That was fresh ground, same height, everything. We go out, we scalp like crazy. And we're like, what is happening? The John Deere had went to an extended bed knife on the new mowers.
Yeah.
And we didn't know anything about it. So I called a guy at Deere, and he said, I wrote the service bulletin. We done all kind of stuff telling the dealers that this was happening, that they needed to be telling the customers.
Yeah.
You know, Deere was doing their job, but it didn't get past the dealer to me. And it's hard.
And I think, having been on the end of some of those kind of things, Trent, it's that service bulletin probably went to the workshop manager. Did it go to the sales team? Or actually, what you're speaking to really relates back to what I'm saying about the technical sales expert guy. That expert guy needs to know, if we've gone from a BCD of 5 or whatever, and now we've got an extended bed knife on there, be aware that this is going to just be cutting slightly different than you might be expecting. And that's why I think we'd like to think that any salesperson we're dealing with kind of understands that and knows the importance of getting that to you. And I don't know whether Deere and
I don't know what the answer is, because it's mistakes, and everybody makes mistakes all the time, and
it's more and more of a Real Turf Tech's YouTube channel that's airing it, Trent.
That's right. I'm just airing my grievances here since I got a platform.
Yeah, but I think that's the other thing. I don't know if Toro and John Deere do that. We stamp the back of the bottom blade as well. On the greens machine, if you flip that unit over, then you'll see markings on that bottom blade, which should tell you which blade you've got fitted. And yeah, as you've said there, actually, it'd be interesting. I always talk about if it's anything over a millimetre difference in BCD at certain times, certain turf, then you're probably likely to see where that is cutting differently. Which also brings me on to another topic. Back in the old days, how many times would you be grinding a bottom blade on the grinder and you'd realise there was quite a big nick out of it, and you're working away at the top face, and it's hard work working away face. And actually, I can get this out pretty quick if I just take that out the front face. And then you've just changed your BCD completely, haven't you, from that one unit?
I'm guilty of that, and not that long ago, probably less than 10 years ago.
Oh.
I always thought the top face is wider. It's a whole lot easier to take out of the front. A used bed knife, if I'm regrinding it, I would take a good bit out of the front, so I wouldn't have to grind as much on the top. And if you can stay within your behind center, that's fine. But you do have to be careful doing that. And the same thing is these guys that front face bed knives all the time. I've heard guys doing it weekly.
Yeah.
Run a front facer across the bed knife. And then the next thing you know, you're scalping like crazy. You just changed your BCD by a 1/4 inch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or 20.
It just,
how much?
It does.
I was thinking about, the conversion. What's a 1/4 inch?
Yeah,
in millimeters.
6.8 2.5 was it's just over 6 mil, I think, isn't it?
Okay,
So
6 mils.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So significant.
Yeah,
But yeah, when you say about 10 years ago, that's exactly what I say to people. And when I was back in the shop, that's what I would be doing. I'd be thinking, certainly for the dealer, I'd be thinking, I'm doing this to earn money. I need to keep these units going through this winter service time. You've got units piling up around you, and you're trying to crack through them as quickly as you can.
and bed knives are expensive. Yeah, I want to save as much money as I can.
It's only sort of recent years where it's all about keeping that unit relaxed, all about keeping that geometry the same, all about keeping things as close as you can to where you need them to be. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
don't know if people, because I'm with you. In the last 5 years, I think it's came a long way cutting unit, and not that
mm,
anything's changed in the manufacturing side, but at the end user level, I think there are more people realizing and talking about it
I,
than ever before.
I would certainly say that there's some younger guys coming through now who are much more into understanding the geometry than certainly I was years ago. I
Mhm.
think also, Trent, I can think of three people certainly, which would be yourself, Mike Rollins, and Tom Stidder, that
Yeah,
have really changed it really through social media. And Mike's cut line is king. That was an absolute game changer. That's the turf Bible.
mm,
And Tom Stidder, actually, Tom worked for Scats at the same time as I did, so we've known each other for a lot of years.
okay, yeah.
And what he's doing at the moment is great. There's a lot of really good stuff coming out from what Tom's doing. So yes, I think a bit more on the social media, a bit more of Real Turf Techs podcast. Certainly, when I discovered the Real Turf Techs podcast, it was like, wow, there's a podcast for this.
Oh wow, yeah, that's awesome. I love it. I love it. That's
Yeah. Mm.
So, you ready for a second question?
Fire away. Fire
Yeah, no,
away.
this is awesome. We've been going 30 minutes on question one, but no, I mean, there's been a lot of
I
other
said there'd be
questions
some
in
heavy
there too.
editing. Heavy
Yeah, the
editing.
other thing, and honestly, before we get to this, you were talking about technical publications, if I can say that.
Mm.
Yeah, what is Jacobsen doing as far as technical publications? I mean, you got parts manuals, you got service manuals. I'm assuming we can find all those online. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. If you
Yeah.
go on to jacobsen.com or ransomes.com, then you'll find a good level, all the parts, all the operators manuals, and more so, Trent, you'll find service manuals on there as well, which is great.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
What
Do y'all have, just because I don't know, does Jacobsen have, and I hate to compare, but it's the only way I know to do this. Do they have, Toro has I don't remember, it's the Real
Yeah, I
More
know.
Basics or something
Yeah,
like that?
yeah.
Or Aftercut Appearance Guide? Do they have anything like that?
We have what we call the real technology book, which our dealers have access to. I'm not sure if that's on the website or not. That's come up as it does. It would benefit from being updated, but it's very detailed, where we'll go through things. Certainly for us, with cutting units, our box frame construction is a real big thing. The welded frame pretty much covers everything from a Jacobsen point of view. I'm not sure. I don't think that's on the website at the moment, but I can certainly have a word with our guys and see if that could be.
I would love to see something like that,
Mm.
especially with the research and stuff I'm doing. I'm trying to get together any technical information I can get to see the commonalities and the differences between manufacturers and how they recommend doing things.
Yeah, I think there will be when we come to talk a bit more about the actual cutting units. There's probably more to discuss there, but I think certainly for us that box frame construction and the attention to detail on the jig that's the frames welded to is a big thing for us. I think the if we think I'm not sure which one of you should have a chart that I worked together with Linton Lewis to put together, which was one that gave the grinding specs and BCDs and
Yes.
clearances.
Yeah. You
Uh,
did send that to me. And if anybody listening, if you want to, as long as I get Bruce's permission here, if anybody listening wants a copy of that, I'd be happy to share that. As long as
yeah,
that's cool with you.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
again, I think hopefully we'll touch on it a bit more, but we're certainly going down the avenue of trying to get as much information out there as we can, and service and diagnostics on machines and things as well.
Yeah, because it lists behind center distance
Yeah,
and all that stuff, which is
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
But
And I
yeah,
think,
I want all manufacturers to do something like that. And I understand that it changes based on your how to cut and some of those things. But for anybody that doesn't know, everything, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but everything that I've heard most of the time is based on an eighth of an inch how to cut. I know that's the way Toro does it. I
if
don't know if y'all do it any different than that. As far as you're talking, your behind center distance and all that kind of stuff is based on an eighth of an inch.
yeah, so I think as long as an eighth of an inch, which is, if I said a quarter was something like 6 point whatever it was, 3.2 millimeters is what we use,
Mm-hmm.
which was to try and be standard against what we saw other people using. So
Okay.
3.2. So in terms of thou, what's that? That's just over
Yeah,
20, is it? Yeah,
yeah, that's right there. Yeah, it's
yeah,
120 eighth of an inch, 125 thousandths.
yeah.
So
So
yeah, you're
3.2
right
mil
there.
will be there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then so we'll use that, and the figures in that CAD drawing, of course, are sorry, figures in the table are from the only thing that I would say to definitely keep in mind. That will be with a new reel, so you'll be at a 5-inch reel with a
Mm-hmm.
new bottom blade as well. So of course, once the reel starts to wear, actually in the measurements on the CAD drawing, the BCD doesn't move very much at all on our 5-inch unit. But of course, you've got bottom blade wear, you've got reel wear that you need to take into account if you're looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
But it gives you that starting point to know where you're at, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. How do you get where you're going if you don't know where you're starting from?
Yeah,
You got to know.
yeah.
I couldn't tell you how to get across the country if I didn't know where I was starting from. So that's definitely an important piece of the puzzle. Tell
Hmm.
us what your favorite tool is.
I think I need to update myself, Trent, because
Okay.
I would have historically said to you when I first saw the snap-on power probe,
Okay. Yeah.
that changed my world. I love that thing. Fantastic. Your starter motor's not going bang. Let's whack 12 volts here, whack 12 volts there. Let's earth
Yeah.
this. And that was great up until we got into more complex sort of CAN bus systems and 5-volt circuits, and banging 12 volts around the place wasn't the best
Got to be
thing.
careful, huh?
But on a serious note, yeah, now and there is a little attachment to go on the power probe so you can dial back the voltage and things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that power probe stands out. Now, it, a little bit newer, you would probably say, oh, you've got to have a decent multimeter. Wherever you're going now,
Okay.
you've got to
Yep.
have a decent multimeter. But what I would certainly say from our point of view, what we're trying to do is make life a lot easier for end users. We're putting so much more information into the screens on the machines and diagnostics through the screens on the machines. So now what we say in our technical training, by the way, the manuals that we do put together by Hanfred Sievers with Simon Anderson assisting, and those two guys put together manuals like you would not believe.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
But more and more, we're telling the mechanics, before you even put your overalls on, make sure you've sat on the seat, make sure you've gone through the screen. Now we'll be able to see inputs and outputs on that screen. And the latest, I think, is what I was trying to show you at the show, Trent, with we're actually on the screen itself there, you'll see the circuit diagram for traction, lift lower, mow, and you'll see individual circuit diagrams, and on those diagrams are the actual voltages that are being seen by the controller and the outputs that the
Wow.
controller's
That's
putting
super
out.
cool.
It's a game changer.
That's really cool.
And the real big advantage to that is years ago, we would say if you were using your multimeter, you shouldn't be probing into insulated lines. You'd have your super glue to try and, if you had to, back probing, didn't we? And we said, back probing's okay. Now we're talking on circuits that are dealing with such low voltages and milliamps and things. Really don't want to be doing that either. So for us, having that information available right there on the screen is fantastic. And even if you've got an operator that hasn't got the benefit of a Trent in the shop go through that. Nowadays, of course, probably the tool that we should all be talking about is probably more to do with your phone.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
and and you're FaceTiming with them and you're guiding them through the screen to get you to that screen to
Mhm.
see that information. So that's a very long-winded answer to a question about favourite tool, but it's changed
No,
over.
that's really good, and it is changing, just like you say. And I'm wondering, you went from probe to multimeter. Do you know anybody using an oscilloscope?
Now that's your next step, isn't it? Because now I think an
Yeah.
oscilloscope is going to become a necessity. And only last week I was with one of our dealers up north, and they were talking about tracking a problem, and they were struggling with tracking that problem. But they're a fairly big dealer and have an oscilloscope, and it's what they could see on the oscilloscope that was giving them the
Wow,
eye.
I love it.
Um,
I love it.
I don't know, a Pico scope's big in America.
Yep.
Pico, yeah,
I don't know how big they are. I don't know, and I do know quite a few turf guys, mechanics. I don't know anybody using an oscilloscope or a picoscope, which is the same thing. Pico, for the if any the listeners don't know, Pico is just a brand of oscilloscope. There's a guy, and he's in the UK somewhere, and I want to say it's like Mechanical Mindset. He's got a YouTube channel,
oh,
and
yeah,
I think he's sponsored by Picoscope,
yeah.
and he recommends a Picoscope 204A, which I just bought one, and I
Oh,
hadn't used because and that so this was a loaded question, I guess, because I think it's going there. So a
yeah,
lot of people in automotive are using scopes, and all of a oscilloscope is you can measure volt, you can measure all kind of stuff, but it's over a period of time. Where with a multimeter, it's some
yeah.
things happen so fast you don't see it on the multimeter. Just like a starter, you hit the starter switch, and that current draw jumps to 400 amps, and then it jumps back down to 125 in no time, and you're not able to see that on your multimeter. So anyway, go ahead.
I think that just to touch on that, because you get the guy who will tell you, look, I've got this multimeter, it's only £20. Oh, it's great, I don't know. And you're just thinking to yourself, yeah, that's got the rate of nothing really. And then you got your fluke one that's really is picking up a lot more. But you move it on to Pico or an oscilloscope. And, I mentioned about my dad and the car garage. To this day, I'm still a member of the IMI, the Institute of the Motor Industry. And to keep up on the professional register, you need to do your CPD or whatever you call it, a continued professional development. So my local group would throw on seminars every month. And I remember I'm probably going back, this was when I was still working at Howard, so it's over 10 years ago. And Pico came in and did a fantastic seminar that blew my socks off, analysing compression and all sorts from measuring
Oh
it and
yeah,
inject. But I think we're definitely going down that way, Trent, aren't we? So you're just on that. You're treading into new territory for us. Really
I
interesting to see. I'll be keeping an eye out on the YouTube channel.
all right. And so I'll let the cat out of the bag. Just like I do a lot of things, I jump the gun a little bit because in my mind, I said I would be able to diagnose a loose timing belt on a John Deere Pro Gator EFI.
Okay.
And I bought the Pico scope and the leads, and then I popped the bed, and it does not have a cam sensor.
Uh,
So it's going to be really hard to tell if it's got a crank sensor, not a cam sensor. So it's
I,
going to be really hard to
do, you,
tell.
do you know what? I think we're all the same. We're just looking for a problem that we can use as an
Yes.
excuse to
Uh
say,
huh.
I need
Yeah.
one of those.
Yeah. I know. I gotta make an excuse up in my mind to buy a tool.
Yeah.
So that's what I did, and yeah, we will use it here eventually. But I do think it's coming for sure, just like you
Ah,
said.
yeah.
And I was talking to a tech the other day, and it was one of the dealers, maybe Toro, come out under warranty looking. He was having a trouble with the Toro Pro Force blower or something. And
Hmm.
I don't even remember what the problem was, but the guy used a oscilloscope to see where it was losing power.
Yeah.
That's
Just
what he
seeing
said.
that
Right.
tiny fluctuation on the way
Mhm.
forward and tracking it
Yeah.
that way, which is,
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely coming. And I think we mentioned before we come on, Jacobsen, we're right there at the front with the electrification of equipment. And there's a lot of good reasons for that. And if you think about problem solving, how many times do you look at something and say that's got hot, it's got too hot, it's got too close to the engine, or the vibration or something like that? So electrifying the thing cuts out the noise, cuts out the heat, the vibration, all of that good stuff. But we also talked about CAN bus systems, super low voltages, and then you start getting pushback pins in plugs or opened out terminals in plugs, don't you, where your connection's not so great. And I think that's where your oscilloscope's really going to start to come to good use. And
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the electrification that Jacobsen's doing and some of the new machines you got out? And
Yeah, I think we're very fortunate with the EasyGo side of the business. We've been running with Samsung batteries right from the start, really, with the lithium on the buggies, which then electrifying turf equipment, obviously, then Samsung are the natural partner for us. And the great thing there is we'll use the battery management system, the BMS, so it's Samsung supply the batteries and the BMS, which is great. And the Eclipse Elite greens mower, the E360, we've been out with that now for a number of years, and that's just gone from strength to strength. I still want to be able to bring that machine to you, Trent, and I'd love to go through it and really put it through its paces with you. Um, but
I would
as,
love to see it. I would in action.
yeah,
You got any trips planned over here?
I'm coming across for the show,
Okay. All right.
which
Awesome.
would be good. And then there may be a trip coming up in March with the training manager looking at some training that we're doing over there. So that's not confirmed or been spoken about just yet. Um,
Okay.
but I'd love to do something like that. Obviously, you've got the
Yeah.
American dealers, you've got the American backup guys. As I said to you, the guys over there are really good guys. But
If you're
from my,
coming over to Augusta or something,
yeah, yeah,
let me know.
that's not a million
I'm
miles.
3 hours. I'm 3 hours away.
Yeah,
I'd be
which for
happy
you
to
guys is a
drive
hop and a
over.
skip and a jump.
It is for us. Yeah. I don't got to drive
Yeah,
3 hours to get anywhere. It seems like even to downtown Atlanta.
yeah.
Whatever, 60 miles takes you 3 hours in Atlanta traffic. It's
Oh,
nuts.
yeah.
But
So I think then now the ESLF1 is released, which if you go back historically, we had the super lightweight 1880. So it's the 5-inch reels, 18-inch wide. So that became the SLF 530, which is still out there. But the ESLF is the electrified version. So we're getting over 6 hours run time on that, depending on conditions and everything else that's out there.
no, that's awesome.
And the really nice thing there is controlling that frequency of cut. So programmable frequency of cut, all of that is available on to the point where I describe it as like radio channels. So you might go out and you might be targeting your broadleaf in your fairways. So you might have set a frequency of cut up, low speed up to suit trying to capture the broadleaf, and then you a hit of a button under another setting, and we can have up to 4 settings. We can program 4 preset modes of frequency of cut, all in that package of that
Okay.
super lightweight 18-inch, 5-inch reel. So really at the top end where we want to be quality of cut wise.
Tell me a little. This is very interesting. So tell me a little bit more about that. What would be your frequency of cut for broadleaf? Would that be a slower frequency of cut?
I'm going to say yes, and there's always more ways to skin a cat, as they say. But I've talked with Tom Stidder a lot about this as well, about what he finds, and certainly what I've found is slowing the frequency of cut down, opening it up. Often you can get confused if you're saying tightening it or lowering it, but in other words, slowing the reel down for the broad, just to give that a little bit more time to get into that reel. Less wind, wider mouth, if you like, if we think of
Yeah, yeah.
between the blades. So slowing that right down to the point of where it's ribbing. I've stolen that, if you like, from Tom. where gone through a process of slowing it down until it's ribbing, and then bringing the FOC back a bit tighter. And you'll see it, Trent. If you get we've seen it several times where we get a patch of broadleaf grass is encroaching into a fairway, and it's not really been getting to grips with it, and spend a couple of cuts going over it like that really does cut that broadleaf out. And then
that's interesting. Yeah,
and then of
that's
course
good stuff.
and then you might then just, so that was, if you like, on radio channel number one.
Yeah.
Super comes back and he says, "Oh, we've got the broadleaf under control now. I want to get back into this finer turf." And radio channel number two brings you back to I don't know whether it be a 12 mil frequency of cut or something like that to come back in and get into the fine turf.
I've never really thought about it until you're talking about it here, but something we face here in the South in the spring is seed heads on Bermuda, and they're very hard to cut.
Yeah.
And I've never thought about turning the reel speed down to see if that would allow a little more time or less turbulence or whatever it is.
Yeah.
To let that seed head get in between the reel blade and the bed nut. That's an idea.
Definitely.
And you heard it first right here on Real Turf Techs. If this helps, you can send money to me and Bruce.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cash I'll split it with you. Yeah. Cash is king.
I think the what I will say there, Trent, is a phrase that Linton Lewis, the design engineer who's now retired, but a phrase that he used, which I loved, was, when we're saying this, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. It's from other people. It's drawn from everywhere. Sure. And I want to make sure that I'm saying I've used that. I've seen that work. Certainly in the summer games last year, it really made a big difference. And certainly in talking with Tom Stidder, then
that's awesome.
He finds the same thing. Every course is different. Everybody approaches it in a slightly different way.
Right. Yep.
And as we talk about, as a starting point, using the height of cut as the frequency of cut. And the only thing I'm going to say there is, when people talk about that, is just remember the cutting unit isn't interested or doesn't know the bench height of cut isn't the height of cut we're looking for. Really, we're looking to match that to the actual height of cut as a start. So frequency cut to bench to actual height of cut, and then work it from there. And if you're trying to capture those broads, lengthen it out. If not, then bring it up or down and play with it and see where you get to.
Yeah, that's very interesting, though. Well, I like it. That's what I love about the podcast. That's what I love about talking to different people, because, like you're saying, we all do the same thing. We all do it a little bit different, but one person might figure something out that nobody else knows about, or only 10% of us know about, or whatever it is. So it's great to get that information out there. So thank you for sharing that, and thanks to Tom to sharing it to you. That's the way it works, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Word of mouth and networking and all those things. That's how we all get better at what we do. And hopefully make our job easier.
Yeah, and Tom or yourself, or again Mike Rollins, absolute guru. I love talking to the guys, particularly likes of Tom, that's out there every day at a different course, different areas of the world, bringing back a lot of information. And whereas I'm coming at it more from, what are we building? So what is Tom experiencing? Coming back to feedback to the factory, what is he experiencing that we can build in, make it easier for him to achieve his end goal, which of course his end goal is to help improve courses. Yeah. Of course, the other big thing, if we're on the subject of that kind of stuff, is actual bottom blade selection. So you mentioned BCD, obviously, and that's critical. And I would hesitantly suggest that you and I might get down into the depths of conversations, and we get right down into the deep end of it. And stage one would be, make sure your roller bearings are okay. That's obvious. Sure you've got a bottom blade on there that is giving you clearance to the turf. And that's still something that we find we're talking about a lot, and the effects of different front roller profiles to the actual height of cut, and what bottom blade is giving you enough clearance. How do you check that? So
Yeah, so I'm happy to jump in this rabbit hole with you. It's yeah,
Superb.
one of my favorite. Yeah, one of my favorite places to live. Is there a magic number on clearance? How much clearance do you need? And obviously I know that it's going to vary depending on what your height is and what grass you're mowing and all those things. But is there a good rule of thumb?
Yeah, that is definitely a rabbit hole, and I think I'd almost defer to you to give us that answer. I know from my point of view, it often starts from an aftercut appearance issue. Something's going differently. I won't say wrong. Something's going differently. There's an aftercut appearance issue that the customer's been struggling with. The dealer may be involved with or may not be involved with. I think end user at that stage is often hesitant about involving the dealer because if it's a turf issue, of course, he might end up with somebody coming out from the dealer and he might end up with an invoice. And also, of course, pride stops us reaching out too quickly anyway, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So for me, the first thing will be to look at the actual bottom blade itself, and it sounds self-explanatory, really, but we're looking at the amount of shine up on that front edge of the bottom blade arm. If you're getting anything more than the first 5 or 10 mil that's got any shine on that front of the bottom blade, then surely whatever you think the clearance is at that point, it is not enough.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, no, I follow what you're saying.
and if it's shining back past what I would call the chamfer, that you end up with parallel to the turf, and I'm going to say most manufacturers are the same, where we purposely manufacture the bottom blade so we have a longer edge that ends up being parallel with the turf to the shear point. If
Mm-hmm.
you're getting any shining up on that chamfered edge, then it's a concern. And if it goes back further than that, then obviously it's 100% the wrong blade. And perhaps we're jumping into tips and tricks, but often I would say it's a surprise to people that aren't using the prism regularly when obviously conditions change, keeping on top of that with a prism and seeing what the actual height of cut is. So if we're setting the classic one I would use, and I use 3.2 millimeter because that's we're
Okay.
back at that
Yeah.
eighth of an inch. If we
Mm-hmm.
looked at our low profile blade, we state that's okay down to 3.2 mil. So if we said 3.2 mil there, and I'm just checking on here, the next blade down will be a tournament blade at 2.4 mil. So if I'm
Okay.
benching at 3.2, is 2.4 going to be enough? That's going to give me 0.8 of a millimeter clearance. Then you start thinking about what your front roller is. Then you think about, have you got a weight transfer system on the unit that's transferring a bit of the weight from the front roller to the back? Then you think about it, maybe even thinking about things like your 7, 11 or 15 blade reel. If you're a 15 blade reel and you're spinning at 2,200 RPM, then you've got quite a lot of gyratory forces coming through. So I usually think you end up needing to be at least one blade lower than you would have thought you needed to be at. But I guess the tip or the trick that I would say, again, standing on the shoulders of giants, would be mow the green, then with the thinnest sheet of plastic that you can find, run
Mm-hmm.
that over the top of the rear roller, under the bottom blade, and then back out over the top of the front roller. Set the unit back down onto the green that you've just mown. Draw forwards just a fraction, so the unit is settled and bedded, if you like, onto the
Okay.
turf. And then from the front, stop the machine, obviously, and from the front, draw that polythene out and feel the resistance on that polythene.
Okay.
The resistance you feel on the polythene can only be the bottom blade on the turf. So what I would say is, if you do, that's no argument about the angle that you've looked at your prism. That's no argument about turf conditions. It's not offending anybody. Feel that resistance, then move and drop that unit on the cart path or back in the shed. And there is then zero resistance on the polythene.
I got you.
So you've got zero resistance on the hard surface, drop it on the green. If you've done that polythene, you need to raise your height cut. Or change your bottom blade, of course, I guess.
Or change
So,
the bottom blade.
The thing to be careful here is if you have a situation where you're setting at 3mm height of cut and you look at the prism and you say, oh, I think I'm less than 2mm actual. And then you think, oh, that's if it's the championship bottom blade, we're 1.6mm. So if we're on a shaver blade or a championship blade, we're at 1.6mm. We're at somewhere around 2mm or whatever. That's where I would say, let's look at the bottom blade for dragging. Evidence, if you like, witness marks, but being tested as well. Then you convince a customer to raise it up by, I'm just trying to think of a 10th thou or a tiny bit anyway. And they look back and they say the actual height of cut hasn't changed. Clearly it was in quite hard contact then, wasn't it? And then we want to bring that height of cut up until we've got no resistance or limited resistance on that polythene. So I haven't answered your question.
No, you've done a good job of dancing around this thing. Yeah. No, I'm teasing, man. I'm teasing.
I've danced around it. And of course, when you talk about clearance, that'll all come back to the position of the reel in the unit. Is it biased towards the front or the rear roller, and which suits us better? And actually the roller base itself.
There's a lot of variables there for sure.
Yeah.
In that. I believe, and I might misquote this, but I think John Patterson says half your height of cut is what he wants his clearance to be.
Yeah.
So if his height of cut is 120, he wants 60 thousandths of clearance.
I definitely like the sound of that.
And it does make sense. Yeah. I don't know what the minimum is or the threshold of that. If 120, and maybe it does depend on what you're mowing and if it's ryegrass versus Bermuda, or a lot of those could be factors too on how much clearance you need.
Well, I think you are right, and I'm not the guy with the most experience of warm season grasses. I say there was 3 years in the Middle East learning about Bermuda and paspalum at the time, but I've not worked with zoysia, stuff like that. But
lucky. You're lucky you hadn't worked with.
But I think they do. I think the warm season grasses tend to show up issues quicker, it seems to me. I don't know, just from looking at you guys, and certainly John was one of your first guests. I don't know if you remember what number guest he was on the podcast, but he...
Not right off. 60 something? Maybe.
No, I don't think he was earlier than that. But no. Either way, he certainly caught my attention, I will say that. And it's been great to meet John and yourself and other guys when I've been over there. And also, John, on one of Mike Rollins' little video episodes where he features John, it's just like a 2-minute episode of a great workshop setup, a great work ethic, and the level of professionalism that this industry is really trying to make sure we achieve.
Oh, yeah, John, definitely. He's one, I'm glad to call him a friend. I'll put it that way. It's awesome to have him right down the road. A great resource for our industry. And very humble, and he'll help anybody. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from or whatever. You give him a call and he'll help you any way he can. And I've said it 1,000 times, but I'll say it again. That's what I love about this industry. Most of us are that way.
Yeah.
I get a random call today. I'll help whoever it is as best I can to get them going or whatever the case may be. Yeah, you want to get a little deeper on? We're at 1 hour and 7 minutes right now. So, get a little deeper on, or we got tips and tricks if you got any more you want to share. And then I'd like to talk cutting units and then anything else you want to talk about.
Yeah, I think on the tips and tricks, the polythene test is certainly a good one to think about. The other one, which every time I see it anywhere, removing broken studs out of blocks or anything else, which one of your guests put me on some arc welding rods, which are really good as a tip.
Okay, yeah, a Stractaloy.
Yeah. So that was good to see. And then, of course, you hear a lot of people talking about welding and nut stud. And when the stud's sheared off flush, which they often do, I'd always just throw out there to make sure you weld a washer onto it first. Weld a washer
Yeah.
on
Yep.
so you can get that penetration. Weld the nut to the washer, and you put 2 lots of heat into it, which has got to be good. You get better penetration. That's one that's always been a useful one for me, which again will be for me leaning back towards Howard Marshall and Marshall Engineering. Great for anything like that.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. And like you said, it's easier to get an arc between the bolt or whatever it is and the washer first than trying to go through a thick nut or whatever it is.
Yeah, and then
Hard to
it
get
does.
good penetration
Yeah, and
that
then your
way.
wire pushes the nut out of position, doesn't it?
Yeah, yep.
Then
Sounds
you
like
hold
you've
it with
done
your
this
finger.
before.
Yeah.
Right, yep, yep. I've been there, done that. Yeah, any other tips and tricks?
Just try and think of any off the top of my head now. I mean, again, just in relation to our machines, if you've got any of our machines from the last couple of 3 years, make sure you're looking in that screen. If you think you've got an issue and you're going to dive into something, look green first because there's an awful lot of information there that's right there for you. But yeah, other than that, I think the first one that I think we all know about now that I saw way back in my farming day was running a ringer weld around a tape, and
Yeah,
I was fascinated to watch the guy do that.
I've done
That's
that so many times. It is definitely one of the best tricks in the book for sure.
yeah, yeah,
It's fun. That trick's been around. Like you said, you learn it in your farming days. And that was one of the first tricks I learned probably in the mechanic world. But you talk about it in a class or something, and there's people that's never heard of it before. Everybody's got to hear it for the first time somewhere. So
mm.
if they're hearing it here, that's fine.
If they
Yeah.
get the same level of amazement from it when they use it and see it as I did, watching a guy called Paul Jarman came out and was removing a bearing out of a Mapro or something at the time. And I just stood there and watched and was amazed. I thought, where's this magic coming from?
Well, so my favorite thing to do on the John Deere rear roller brush, that bearing, it's not completely blind, but you can't get to it from the
Yeah,
backside. And it's a regular ball bearing, but then the balls break and the center race comes out, so you're just left with the outer race. And you run that bead weld around there, and I've put the ground clamp on the bearing housing, and I'll run the bead around there, and then I'll grab it with the clamp and hit it on the table, and it falls out.
yeah,
And it's just great.
yeah.
It's awesome.
You can't
Never
help but,
gets old.
yeah, I was going to say, you
Right.
can't help but give yourself a little smile each time.
Yeah, never
Yeah.
gets old.
I
Yep.
think that the one other thing that I will just throw out there is going back to not so much the Power Pro, but talking about starting issues. That's things like putting a jump lead from the starter to the earth to rule out any dodgy earths, and putting the voltmeter across the contacts on the back of the solenoid to see if you're getting any voltage running through the multimeter, which would be an indication that your contacts on your starter motor are not good because it's sending some
Yep.
voltage through your multimeter, all that kind of stuff. But to be honest, I think I'm not sure what number of episodes you're up to, but there's been an awful lot of really good tips and tips
Oh
and
yeah, there's
tricks come out.
been a ton shared. Yeah, we're in the 160s. I don't
Yeah,
remember exactly where we are. Yeah, I don't keep track. I do, but I don't. I can't name that off the top of my head. My head is full of so many numbers that that's not one of them that stays up there. But I'm going to look right now while I'm thinking about it. Let's see. You're actually, right? This is 159
yeah.
getting recorded right now. Almost to 160.
I was just thinking of when you did your first podcast, if you'd have thought to yourself, yeah, I'll be at 159 at some point.
Yeah, no, I never dreamt. I didn't really think it through that long. Hey, let's do a podcast. Okay, I'll interview some people. And
Go.
then, yeah, and here we are. Whatever, is it going on 5 years? Because I think I started in March of 21. So, yeah, this March. Yeah, yeah, just unbelievable. Never would have guessed, but I'm happy to be doing it, and I still get a lot of good feedback. So, I'll keep it up as long as I can. All right, let's talk cutting units for a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and some behind center distance, maybe. Again, to re-reference the sheet that you come up with, a wonderful resource for us end users to know what bed knife we put on and what our behind center distance is going to be and grind angles and all that stuff is in there. Wonderful resource. And y'all only make two different lengths of bed knives? Is that
When you say two different lengths, as in 18s and 22s, or you
no? That would change behind
change
center distance.
BCDs? Yeah, I mean, so I talked about earlier, we punch the back of the bottom blade, so it's to reference. So if we start off at the thinnest, then that's the championship bottom blade. So that'll be stamped with an XXR. Now that is a very similar behind center distance to the next blade, which is the Super Tournament, and that'll be stamped XX. So the profiles of those two blades are pretty much the same. There's not a lot of difference in those at all. In fact, unless you get into the nitty gritty, I've not got the chart in front of me, which I probably should have had on one of these other
I don't.
screens. But
Hang on just a second, if you don't mind. Would you mind if I shared? I
yeah,
have it here. If I can find out what window it's on.
it does look like there's an
Here.
awful lot of information on that,
Yeah.
but a
Can you
lot of
see
it,
it there on my
yeah,
screen?
yeah.
It's probably you probably can't read it.
So just gonna change to my other glasses.
Yeah. Yeah, you're gonna have to get some fine glasses there
Yeah,
for that.
but from there, so just going across, we start off on the left with a bed knife part number. So just to make people aware, that's a 22-inch blade though. So if you're
Yep.
looking at the
Okay.
18-inch units, then that's a different number. And then directly referenced there is the sort of lowest bench height of cut. So realistically, that's saying if we set a championship blade at 1.6, plus you want 1.6 plus your clearance, really, don't. Then there's a description, so we give the marking there as well, which is useful for people that aren't so familiar. At least if they've got this chart, they can flick it over and see, okay, XXR's championship. Front face thickness, recommended for front face thickness. And we know it's pretty critical to have that front face thickness the same across the machine, don't we, across the unit.
Yep.
That's a much longer conversation, isn't it, when we start talking about
Oh yeah, yeah.
limits.
Yep.
And actually, front face angles is an interesting conversation. Then the angles, top face angle, front face angle. And the front face angle, of course, when we start talking about presentation to the turf, we've got to then think about the attitude angle of the bottom blade. So that 5 degrees would be 5 degrees if the bottom blade was flat, but we put in the attitude of that bottom blade at whatever it might be, 6 or 7 degrees, and then we plus that 5 to get the presentation angle. So just also referencing the units that those bottom blades are fitted to. And you mentioned about height of cut. That, for us, quite an important thing for us is which rear roller has been fitted. 2-inch roller, and then we've used, to get our BCD, we've talked about a height of cut, 3.2 millimeters, and then we're into that all-important one that you're interested in, Trent, the BCD there. So I think I'm straining my eyes, but the championship and super tournament should be pretty similar.
BCD.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's close there.
And then the
146 to 129,
okay,
or
yeah,
3.7 to almost 3.3, 4/10 of a millimeter or something. That's not.
yeah,
I would say that's close in the ballpark. Yeah. So on the what's the bottom angle to ground, and it's got 1, 2, 3, and 4.
yeah. So if you look at the green sort of section of a blade below, then you'll see
Oh,
the
okay.
numbers referenced there. So we're actually giving at those height of cuts the actual angle that each one of those part profiles, if we like, at to the ground. So
Okay. All right.
I
Very
think
good.
The interesting thing I want to look at there, though, Trent, is that so the XR Championship and XX Super Tournament are similar BCDs, but if you go to the next one, the Tournament Blade, that's where we go to what is our highest, if you like, BCD. We jump back quite a bit there. If we've got a Tournament Blade in, we're going, and this is again, we're interested in talking about the terminology that different manufacturers and different trainers use. And I'm not sure whether you talk about reel in the canopy, or I've heard dip, or however we want to talk.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I've never heard of I've never seen anybody or heard anybody define a term, and I guess I've heard it called dip more than anything, but I don't know. That's
no,
good, bad, whatever it is.
I like reel in the canopy because it's descriptive of what's happening. Perhaps. So with our Tournament Blade, you've got more reel in the canopy or more dip, and then when you go into the Super Tournament and the Championship, obviously then you're coming into lower heights of cut, and that BCD is coming towards the centre line more. So that chart gives a good basis. And what the other interesting thing, how heights of cut seem to be coming lower and lower on fairway mowers, and that's a trend that's been going on for some time.
Yeah, I would agree.
So it's worth knowing for us, if you've got an LF 570, so you're the 7-inch reels, then those greens blades do fit. So you can get down the classic one that we here talked about a lot, and certainly JCB are looking at setting to a 10mm height of cut on the fairways. So in those instances, I'd recommend actually fitting one of the greens bottom blades. But normally, I would say the low profile blade, which will go to a 3.2mm. Back to John's thing about trying to keep his clearance to half of his height of cut, which sounds sensible to me. If you've got a low profile blade at 3.2 and you're mowing, particularly if it's a bench height of cut of 10mm, when we know we're going to be down lower than that. So the low profile or the tournament even may be good options to put on that LF 570.
Yeah.
So there are just a couple of things to talk about there, in that ultimately, remember, this is with new reels and new bottom blades. Bear that in mind. Also, the limiting factor becomes, with a worn reel, the limiting factor becomes how low we can get the front roller, or how high, depending on which way you...
Yeah. I confuse myself all the time with that. I'm moving the roller up, but I'm lowering the height, trying to keep all that straight.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's really good stuff. Is Jacobsen 5-inch reel 5 inches exactly when it's brand new?
It's pretty close to it.
Pretty close.
It's never under it. It's never hugely more, but it's pretty close to that 5-inch. But it's never under it. It's always a little bit more. One of the reasons I mentioned that on the 7-inch unit when fitting the greens blades, because the blade section itself is thinner, you may find that, and depending on which blade is fitted, you may find that the screws on the come through the bed block may need just to be taken back a bit on a new reel. Yeah, and I think we're the same. I think on that chart there, you'll see we're pretty much in line with everybody. We'll say by the time you've lost 0.4 of an inch, then it's time to be thinking about changing that reel. And certainly, if you get a 7-inch reel down at 6.5 or a 5-inch reel down to 4.5, then that's done and dusted, and it's time. Yeah.
Yeah. Does Jacobsen have a minimum? I see on here you got front face thickness. Is that 35 thousandths or 0.9 millimeter? Is that?
So
if you get below that, your bed knife's done?
On that front face thickness, that's where that's the specification it should leave the factory at. So if that's 0.9 to 1.5, that should leave it. And I think when it comes to what suits the customer, an end user, and I'm willing to listen to anybody on this, but my feeling is it's more important to make sure it's uniform across the 3 units or 5 units than the actual front face thickness itself. Definitely, I would say you will see a difference between, let's say, one that's under a millimetre and one that's at sort of 2 millimetres. If we think about that bottom blade pushing through the grass, being half of the gathering action, if you like, then that front face thickness becomes critical. And of course, the angles, and I'm sure that angle works better adjusted for certain grass types than others as well. So that will
Yeah, I was
be,
just curious there.
yeah,
If
so
you
that
had
will
a
be,
minimum spec on how much can you grind a bed knife?
I think probably like a lot of people, we start talking about once you start hitting the valley.
Yeah,
And on the front face, the thing is, as we spoke about before, it's just having in your mind that you are altering that BCD by taking out that front face each grind.
I do think that's important for everybody to know what you're doing. The more you grind off that front face, the more you're increasing BCD directly, not arbitrarily or anything else. It's a direct measurement. If you take off a quarter inch, you moved your BCD a quarter inch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And we've certainly seen it before, or I've certainly seen it before, where we've had 2 units on a mower with a super tournament on and 1 unit with a tournament blade on, and people fighting and chasing to find out what the heck's wrong with this unit. Why is this looking different? And thinning
Yeah.
everything and being convinced that everything is fine. But sure enough, yeah, there's a blade with a T stamped into it, and the other two are an XX.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Yep. But it happens, and that's the way it goes. Yeah. And that's why you have a job, and I have a job, and everybody else has a job to help people out when they get in that situation.
And of course,
And honestly, it can be an easy mistake too. You got a million things going on in the shop, and you're whatever it is. You get distracted, and you come back, and you forgot all about
and I think
the knife.
that happens to us all, Trent. And I mentioned the likes of Hanfrid and Simon and James Jensen and Steve Turner and those guys. You find yourself putting a call in, don't you? And they don't actually give you the answer to the problem, but they say something that resets your mind, and then bang, you've realised you've overlooked something really straightforward.
I really like the way you put that because when I was working with Jerry Pate, and we had a guy in the shop that he'd been there forever, a really long time. And actually, he's still working there. And I don't know how. He's got to be in his 70s. A super knowledgeable guy. But I would be stumped with a problem, whatever it was, and I would call up William Alberson's his name. And I would call up William and tell him my scenario or whatever. And a lot of times he wouldn't give me the answer to the problem that I needed. But just talking to him, it got my brain reset or
Yeah,
working in a different way.
yeah.
And I would say, that's it. That's what it is. And it's just, I don't know, a really good memory I had working there. And every time I'd call, say, hey, William, got a problem. Help me out here. So for the listeners and anybody else, just pick the phone up and phone a friend. Maybe they can't give you the answer, but maybe they can reset your brain. So I like the way you put that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
good stuff.
for sure. And of course, coming back to looking at the chart, of course, we haven't spoken about setting of the reels. We're on taper bearings, which we feel, for us, offer advantages of holding. We'll set with an air gap, 1 thou to 3 thou. So somewhere on the small print of that chart, we'll say brand new reel, new bottom blade, an air gap. I'm not sure what it says now from memory, but it'll be between 1 and 3 thou. And for us, we feel that the taper bearings give that consistent hold all the way through the wearing life. And if we do hit something, then the helix allows that to unload the spring loading tension on the taper bearing and provide a certain amount of clearance. Not going to say it always.
Ah, okay. Huh,
Yeah.
I've never thought about it like that. Yeah.
A certain
Interesting.
amount. So it could just be the difference between a damaged drill or bed knife to being something that's recoverable. Who knows? But that, and I say, to maintain that sort of 1 to 3 thou clearance with that spring-loaded preload, we keep that reel spinning at potentially 2,200 RPM, depending on frequency of cut setting. all the way through the bearing life. We keep it on song.
How do you feel about the lead in or a chamfer on that leading edge of the bed knife?
Now, that's a really interesting question because if it is set with our 1 to 3 thou, you could argue that dub is not necessary. However, I would say, certainly for myself, if ever I'm grinding a bottom blade, I will always put that dub in on that leading edge.
Yeah.
Best will in the world, it goes out from whether it be your shop or my shop or anybody's shop, it goes out set with a 1 to 3 thou. It comes to the weekend, people get a little bit keener to get something set back on cut if they've just not.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the spanner comes out and it goes down a bit tighter, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I don't know. I understand your argument, but I will object to your argument because this is what I really think happens. Whether you have a 1 to 3 thousandths clearance or not, when that cutting unit is going across the ground and that corner of the bed knife goes over a sprinkler head or a
Mm.
drain grate and it pushes a little force on there, I think it can move it 1 to 3 thousandths.
You make a really interesting point. A really interesting
Yeah.
point. So I would say I'll come back to the electrification. One of the biggest things about being on that E360 Elite or the hand mower, the only thing you can hear is the cutting units, and that's fantastic. So as soon as you pick up a bit of top dressing grit or anything like that, you hear that straight away. So that's great. But we also talk about, when it comes back to our box frame construction, welded construction, this kind of stuff, and all about having that unit, chasing down every little variable we can on that unit, sure that when it's traveling across the turf, it has got no pre-stress sitting in that unit. So if you do hit that sprinkler head or you hit anything or go over anything, the more relaxed that cutting unit is, the less it's going to move if you do hit that sprinkler head. But I'm not going to argue with you that when you hit that, that's going to move it. And I think also when we come back to talking about bottom blade dragging, it's important to understand, although this stuff looks like it's some pretty well heavy duty made stuff, if you set it with a 1 thou gap and you use just your thumb in the center of that bottom blade and push while you rotate the unit, you will move it a thou just with your thumb. So I would agree with you, if you're hitting a spring, something's going to happen. So I'm actually going to go with what you said and say, I did say I'd always put the dub on. I did say with the air gap.
Oh, you did.
I did say with the air gap, I didn't necessarily think it was necessary. But following this conversation, I would always make sure I put that dub on because I agree.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for coming around and seeing what happens at the golf course that I've experienced. I don't know how many times. And I'll be honest, I didn't always put the dub on greens, knives, and stuff because
Okay.
it's not too often we're hitting stuff on greens or whatever. But I had a bed knife that looked like a curly Q. It caught the front edge and spun it up, and I posted it on Twitter. And this was years ago, back when it was still Twitter. And I'll never forget Bob Shop. He's up in Nova Scotia. Anyway, good guy. He said, "Do you put the dub on or chamfer or whatever he called it?" And I'm like, "No, not on greens." He said, "Start doing it." So I've been doing it ever since on greens knives. And it's just whatever, a quarter inch on the end. Your operator's overlapping that much anyway, so it don't matter. And to my memory, I do not remember having another greens knife spin up like that. With that being said, I put that lead in on every fairway knife, and we break shit all the time. So I don't know. I think that a lot of that is our course, and we just went under or just finished renovation, and growing in and all that stuff. So a lot of debris out there to be hit.
And usually when you're under the most time pressure and there's other stuff going on, and
yeah, for sure. Let's do some rapid fire, if that's all right with you. Yep, let's do it. What's your favorite movie?
straight off the top of my head, the one that I want to say is Tombstone.
Oh, all right. You're my friend. I love that. That was awesome. That was a great movie.
That a cracking movie, and it's one of those. I don't know how many times I've watched it, and I don't. Years ago, actually on honeymoon, was over on that side of the States and did a bit of a fly drive, spent some time in Tombstone, and did a little bit of research then. But then watched that film, and that prompted a whole more sort of interest into the Wild West.
Okay,
But
nice.
but
That's awesome.
to find out that a lot of it is quite factual in that film.
Yeah.
But the acting in that film is just superb too, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
it's really good.
I'll throw in a couple more. One would be over here, we would know it as Le Mans 66, which I think you might know as Ford versus Ferrari over there,
Ah, okay.
which is a great film. Comedy point of view, don't mess with a Zohan. That's got to be up there as a comedy film for me.
Say it again. I missed it.
Don't mess with the Zohan.
Ah, okay. Yeah. I don't think I've seen that, but yeah. I'll have to check that out.
So but Tombstone, bang, that's the one.
Good stuff. What would be your last meal?
Last meal, I eat pretty much anything and everything, but it would come to no surprise that James Jensen, our man over there, whenever we've been out for a meal, he knows I'm going to be ordering the sea bass.
Okay. All right. You like the sea bass. That's good. That's good.
But yeah, a good roast or a sea bass, something like that. But if I could, I'd follow that up with a dessert and she's no longer with us, but my mum's apple crumble. That I
Ooh,
would,
yeah, that sounds good.
I'd get some of that back. But don't be putting blueberries in there, blackberries in there. No blackberries in with the apple crumble.
The straight apple crumble.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. I got that straight. Let's see. When I was at Oakmont this year for the U.S. Open, James Breeze, which I think you know, was over.
Yeah.
And there's some other guys. What, Lee Strutt?
Yeah.
He was over, and I can't think the other guy's name. He does a lot of teaching and stuff. Anyway, they had biscuits and gravy for breakfast one morning.
Yeah.
And it was so funny. Yeah, the UK guys were not a big fan of gravy. So we had a good time with it. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Is that a bit like us trying to feed you guys some black pudding?
Yeah, that was exactly what they said. Oh, you got to have some pudding when you come back or when you come over. Yep. Yeah, same thing. What are you most proud of besides your family?
I'm going to be a bit naughty and say that I am just going to mention my two daughters, Trent, because
for sure.
Amy and Laura, every parent wants their kids to succeed and take things further than they can. And every day I'm really proud of them, of who they've become. They're 29 now, I think. They're probably kill me if
awesome.
I got that wrong. But yeah. So as them, I think from that, I think for me, when we moved over to the Middle East, I was still in that mode of I was the farm boy that had worked for the local dealer. And to move out there as a family and spend 3 years over there was pretty big. And then the Jacobsen UK Direct, running that was a big thing of pride for me anyway. So
sure.
Yeah. And then I mentioned Summer Games last year. Being asked to go over there and support that was fantastic.
Oh yeah, that had to be amazing.
Yeah.
I'm envious. I would have loved to been at that one.
Yeah. So quite how you guys do as much tournament support as you do, I don't know, because those hours are brutal, aren't they?
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, the one night at Oakmont, it was like midnight, and we had to be back the next morning at we were getting up at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So didn't get back to the hotel till 12:30 and grab a shower. It's 1 o'clock. So yeah, 2 hours.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it was rough. We do get to nap during the day, but not enough nap time.
I think if Tim from JCB's listening, then he would be sniggering now, saying, "Oh yeah, you'll keep Bruce there. He'll work to whatever time at night, but you won't see him at that time in the morning."
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I really appreciate you coming on. It's been a long time coming, getting our schedules worked out, but thank you so much. This has been great.
No, I love being a guest. Yeah, yeah. Thanks a lot, Trent. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to the Real Turf Techs podcast. I hope you learned something today. If you have any topics you would like to discuss or you'd like to be a guest, find us on Twitter at Real Turf Techs. See you, bye.